On June 6, 1944, 34,000 American soldiers embark on a fateful mission. Their average age is 22, and many believe they won't return.
I wrote a letter home to my sister. Don't expect me to come home. I expected to die.
1944. The Nazis occupy Europe. The Allies launch the biggest attack ever from the sea against a coastline heavily defended by German forces. It's the best chance to liberate Western Europe. But for the soldiers, even making landfall is a battle for survival.
You've come all the way to Omaha Beach, yet as you come off that landing craft, you don't make it this far. You're fighting for your life in the surf.
This is the epic story of the 12-hour battle for Omaha Beach.
They knew in their heart that they were doing the right thing, not only for their country, not only for their families, but for the whole world.
But one of the biggest turning points in modern history hinges on some surprising factors and extraordinary tactics. It depends not just on manpower and advanced weapons, but on magicians and outlandish inventions, like tanks that can swim, exploding paratroopers, and on spies sending secret messages by pigeons. It's a battle where the lives of thousands of American soldiers hang on the accuracy of a weather forecast or the design of a parachute buckle. Yet despite ingenious tactical devices and strategies across 1,000 feet of exposed sand, the most powerful weapons of warfare are still leadership and bravery. D-Day. Who survives and why? Five years into World War II, the future of Europe hangs in the balance. Hitler's Nazis occupy the mainland. Together with its allies, America is spearheading the fight. It's 6 a.m. on the French coast. 8 companies of American troops, the first wave, wait to go into battle. As they approach the landing beach, codenamed Omaha, hundreds of men are praying, knowing that what awaits them is a wall of guns, a killing zone, and possibly death. Among them is 19-year-old Hal Baumgarten.
I'd say the boat was very quiet. They knew what they were going to face.
Like nearly everyone in the landing craft, D-Day is Hal's first action. Although he has no idea now, in the next 12 hours, Hal's life may depend on what he ate for breakfast, the physics of water, and a 2-inch piece of wood. Just a year earlier, Hal was studying at New York University. He was a promising baseball player. Then he was drafted.
I wrote a letter home to my sister. Don't expect me to come home. I expected to die.
One reason Hal wants to fight is because of his faith.
I'm Jewish, and I saw all the newsreels. The Germans going into towns and forcing the people to wear Stars of David.
Like all Jewish soldiers, Hal's given the option of changing the religion listed on his dog tag. That way, if captured, he might avoid Nazi persecution. But Hal has other ideas.
I drew a large Star of David on the back of the field jacket with the Bronx, New York, written around it, so they'd have no trouble identifying me.
Hal and his fellow GIs are headed for Omaha Beach. "1,200 Germans have guns positioned on the dunes overlooking the shoreline. They're armed with the Nazis' devastating new weapon, the MG-42. It's the fastest firing machine gun in the world, double the speed of the American Browning machine gun. The MG-42 is so fast, you can't hear individual shots. It's known as Hitler's zipper, making a sound like ripping cloth. Its speed comes from its revolutionary design. In any gun, bullets are locked in place by a bolt. But the Germans discover that if the bolt runs on tiny rollers, it increases the loading speed of the bullets. It means the gun can fire up to 1,500 bullets per minute. That's 25 bullets a second at a speed of over 2,000 miles per hour, heading straight toward Hal's boat. But there's not just one MG-42 here. There are 5. It means Hal's landing craft could be hit by 125 bullets every second.
When a real machine gunner tactically employs that machine gun the right way, it's an absolute nightmare. One of the very first things you got to do in combat is look for the enemy's machine guns and take it out. Take it out immediately.
Hal and the men must somehow take out these guns. They approach the beach under the intense fire. They're taking on so much water in the heavy swell, they're starting to sink. And their lurching boat triggers another problem: seasickness.
So when we're bailing out the water and the vomiters.
Seasickness is a hazard for anyone traveling by boat. But here, it could mean death. And all because the Navy wanted to give the troops heading for Omaha a special treat. Sailing over from England, the Navy crews decide to give the soldiers a hearty pre-battle meal. A smorgasbord of steak, pork, chicken, sausages, beans, bacon, eggs, ice cream, candy, and donuts. All washed down with coffee.
And don't play with it, just eat it.
The Navy believes a full stomach will raise the soldiers' morale.
You're gonna eat that?
Hal skipped breakfast, eating only a chocolate bar. But for others, the morale-boosting feast is more like the last meal of the condemned.
Seasickness, I'd say, affected their 60% of their ability to fight.
Arriving at Omaha Beach, many of the men are debilitated. And it couldn't happen at a worse time. D-Day, 6:38 a.m. Thousands of American GIs are landing on Omaha Beach. They're cold, tired, and many of them horribly seasick. One who's not ill is 19-year-old rifleman Hal Baumgarten. The landing craft he's on has gone as far as it can, beaching in the surf.
When the ramp went down It was a signal for every gun on that beach to zero in on the exit to the little boat.
German machine gun fire sprays the boat's exit ramp, cutting the men down mercilessly. The only chance of survival for the GIs is to do one thing they've been told not to do: jump over the side.
And I dove in.
Seasick and weighed down by up to 100 pounds of equipment, men desperately leap into water up to 10 feet deep. Bob Sales has wanted to be a soldier since he was a boy. But before he's even fired a shot, Bob's drowning, weighed down by his assault jacket, ammunition, and field radio.
When I hit the water, I went straight to the bottom. I felt that I was drowning. And that's when I really panicked, because the water was deep. Well, when I hit the bottom, I got rid of the radio, and I still had the assault jacket, which had to be done with, or I wasn't going to make it.
Exhausted, sick, and underwater, Bob sheds his jacket just in time.
And I give myself a big push. In just a few seconds, I was back up top.
Those soldiers who escaped death in the water learned a bitter lesson that day. The more seasick you are, the less agile, and the more likely you are to drown.
They just went straight down to the bottom. I saw them drowning.
Hal only ate a chocolate bar for breakfast and wasn't seasick. But like all the soldiers who haven't drowned, he faces another danger in the water. Relentless streams of bullets traveling toward them at 3,000 feet per second. Surviving this mayhem comes down to a surprising law of physics, because it's the water that can now save them.
Behind the side of the tractor, basically. Okay, well, everyone's...
Charlie Adcock is a ballistics expert carrying out an experiment to find out what happens when bullets from an MG-42 hit the water, and he's using 21st century technology to do it.
What we've got here is a high-speed camera. It's going to slow time down effectively 120 times. Ben here is going to fire his MG-42, which was an automatic weapon that was fired at the GIs on Omaha, and we're going to see just what's going to happen. The bullet's travelling at around about 3,000 feet per second.
And what happens if it doesn't stop in the tank?
Well, it's going to come out the tank, and we're going to have to plug a hole and go for it again.
Right, cock the gun. Yeah, I was going to say. Cock it, apply safety catch. Sensors, we think they got it.
3, 2, 1.
The water resistance is so great, it brings the bullet to a standstill in less than a yard.
Basically gone from 3,000 feet per second down to 0 in 2.5 feet. Tops.
At Omaha Beach, the margin between life and death is just a few inches. If the bullets hit the water within a foot of you, you're dead. Within a yard or more, and you're safe. The soldier's mission is just 2 minutes in.
Of the 1,450 soldiers that came in that first wave on Omaha Beach, it's estimated that over a third were casualties within the first hour.
In just 120 seconds, these men have faced the most devastating machine gun in the world. Many escaped death by jumping out of their landing craft, only to drown under the weight of their own equipment. The survivors are those who were more than a yard away from where any bullets hit the water. Hal Baumgarten's among the lucky ones. 2 minutes after landing at Omaha Beach, he's still alive.
This was a horrible sight to me, and it was surreal because the water was popping up all around me. Shells were landing, mines were going off with people being blown up in the air, but my number wasn't up.
Hal's first 2 minutes at Omaha Beach were tough.
So now I had to get onto the beach and do my job.
Now it's about to get tougher. June 6, 1944. Omaha, the bloodiest beach on D-Day. It's now 6:42 a.m., 10 minutes since the start of the landings. And things are going badly. Hundreds of men in the first wave of the invasion have been killed or wounded. Many others are sitting ducks in the water, and they haven't even reached the hardest part, the beach. The men will have to cross the exposed beach under continuous machine gun fire. It's a death zone of 1,000 feet, the length of over 3 football fields. At different stages, they'll face different dangers. For the first 600 feet, they'll have to get past obstacles, like hedgehogs and stakes. At 800 feet is a seawall and rows of barbed wire. Then minefields with 17,000 mines. Finally, after 1,000 feet, they'll reach the dunes at the back of the beach. Only then can they start to attack the Germans.
Very surreal. You're crossing that beach. You've seen it in movies, but never happening to you. This is happening to me.
The infantrymen are alone and unprotected on the beach. But there is a plan to help them. With tanks. If the Allies can get tanks on the beach before the soldiers, they will give cover and can attack the German defenses. But landing craft carrying tanks are vulnerable. They need a way to get tanks ashore on their own. So Allied inventors come up with an ingenious idea. A tank that swims. This is a duplex drive, or DD tank. An amphibious assault vehicle.
The DD tank was the kind of crazy idea that springs up in wartime. It was a Rube Goldbergish device. It was a regular Sherman tank driven by propellers in the water with a canvas screen on it that was held up by pneumatic cylinders. And the crazy thing is, it actually worked.
In the months leading up to D-Day, the amphibious tanks are tested and pass with flying colors. They'll be used to sail ashore during the assault, rising out of the water to surprise the Germans. At the start of D-Day, the tanks sit 6,000 yards offshore on giant landing craft. One of the tank commanders is 24-year-old Sergeant Don Lucy. He's from a large Irish family in California, the youngest of 6. Don's a 6'3" gentle giant of a man who loves his German Shepherd, Duke. Everyone knows Don as Babe. Don's job is to put a DD tank onto Omaha Beach as part of a group of 32. Once on the beach, there should be a tank every 50 yards, providing cover for the infantry. But there's a problem. The waves in the channel are up to 6 feet high. The amphibious tanks have never been tested in conditions like these.
Whilst they worked on a calm lake or a quiet harbour, it was a different matter when the seas were heavy.
It's almost suicidal, yet the planners have no choice. In the weeks before D-Day, the Allies have secretly assembled a huge army in southern Britain. Any delay increases the chances the Germans will discover their plan. Meanwhile, the weather's been bad for days with heavy wind and rain. The Allies can't launch in this. They need better conditions, and soon.
This was bad news for the Allied planners because the invasion could not wait. The Germans would find out about the plans. It was a big problem.
Suddenly, from out in the North Atlantic, comes secret intelligence. Special naval ships. They're not here to fight, but to measure the wind and barometric pressure. They offer clues about what'll happen to the weather 2,000 miles away in the English Channel. And they send back a tiny but crucial piece of information. The readings suggest a break. One day when the weather will improve slightly. June 6th. The success of the invasion and the lives of thousands of American soldiers depends on the accuracy of a single long-range weather forecast. With the clock ticking, the Allied leadership takes a chance. On June 6th, the weather has improved, but the seas are still heavy. Into these waves, 3 miles from shore, Don Lucy's landing craft launches its DD tanks. Don's tank is afloat and swimming, for now. But the canvas shroud isn't designed to cope with 6-foot waves.
Almost immediately, water started coming over and through the shroud. And the crew started to bail, not only to save the tank, but their own lives.
Once the shroud is breached, the water's impossible to keep out. The tank starts to sink.
The driver to get out of a DD tank had to get out a hole like this. It's not easy.
The crewmen are outside. They have a chance to get out. The driver doesn't. Of 29 DDs actually launched into the sea off Omaha Beach, 27 sink. Of the other tanks that reach the beach, most are destroyed. Because he wasn't in the tank, Don Lucy escapes. But 33 other crew members aren't as lucky. The failure of the amphibious DDs to make it ashore means the men on Omaha Beach are on their own. They'll now have to fight their way across the sand and take out the impregnable gun positions without the tanks to protect them.
And they were going to lead us off the beach, but it wasn't to be.
On the beach, the body count continues to rise. But it's not the only story unfolding at Omaha. 7 a.m. D-Day. A half hour since the landings at Omaha Beach started. 18-year-old German conscript Franz Gockel has been shooting at American troops continuously since the Allied invasion began. Gockel is firing from a large concrete bunker overlooking the beach. It's part of a network of 14 fortified positions built on top of the dunes, a product of German military foresight. But how Gockel and the bunkers got here actually results from a battle of wits involving a little-known English stage magician and one of the world's greatest military tacticians. Gockel is one of 20,000 troops charged with defending Normandy. Just a year earlier, he was working for his father's company near the Ruhr Valley, repairing roofs damaged by Allied bombs. But like countless other Germans, he's been drafted into Hitler's war machine. For Franz Gockel, this bunker is also home. Inside the concrete guard post, he and his comrades sleep, eat, listen to music, and relax. By D-Day, they've been here for months.
The fact is that the soldiers that were sent to Normandy to man the Atlantic defenses looked upon it as an easy posting.
You had good food, you had comfortable quarters, pleasant surroundings. You weren't fighting a very hard war at all.
In fact, none of them really ever seriously thought they'd be called upon to defend this coast from an invasion.
The soldiers weren't alone in their thinking. Very few in the German High Command believed the Allies would attack the Normandy coastline. But in fact, they're victims of one of the greatest tricks in military history.
I'm old enough to say, you know, you might not...
And this is the man who helped inspire it.
And if you'll pardon me, I'll just take my medicine.
Jasper Maskelyne is a professional conjurer and illusionist.
Jasper Maskelyne was from a family of magicians, a long line, a dynasty, if you like, who'd been famous throughout the Victorian era.
When war breaks out, Maskelyne wants to use his magic skills to help fight the Nazis.
And there she is.
And he's quoted as saying that, you know, if he could deceive people in a theatre, who, you know, he had their undivided attention, he's in a bright spotlight, they're only a few feet away, and he was pretty sure he could deceive German observers who would be like a mile or more away.
In 1941, during the Allied campaign in North Africa, Maskelyne gets a chance to help in the war effort for the first time. He joins a secret group called A-Force to develop covert military tactics. They're nicknamed the Magic Gang.
You couldn't have had a stranger mix, really, of people. You know, there's everything from an art restorer, a painter, prop makers, that sort of thing you expect, but also, you know, a chemist, an electrical engineer, all kinds of things, and all their talents would come in different ways.
In North Africa, the Allies need all the help they can get. They've been losing the campaign. Before the crucial Battle of El Alamein, they used deception to trick the Germans, courtesy of the Magic Gang. The Magic Gang does it with camouflage and illusion, making jeeps look like tanks and tanks look like trucks. They create a fake army and deceive the Germans into thinking the Allies will attack from the south rather than the north. And the trickery works. The Allies win at El Alamein, turning the tide of the North African campaign in their favor. In Egypt, the city of Alexandria is being heavily bombed in nighttime raids. The Magic Gang devises a plan to black out the entire city. Then they build a mock-up of Alexandria with fake nightlights 3 miles down the coast and fool the bombers into attacking an empty bay.
Well, deception's always been used in warfare since time immemorial, you know, since the first fist fight when someone throws a fake punch, you know, that's deceit. But what Maskelyne and his gang did was kind of use up-to-date technology for a start. He was very much a man of his time in that sense, but also give it a theatrical flair.
By 1943, Allied planners realize Maskelyne's ideas can be put to even better strategic use. They'll hide the real landing site in the invasion of Europe by creating a fake one. The Allies want to invade the Normandy beaches. But to reduce the German defenses there, they stage an elaborate ploy, suggesting they will cross the English Channel at its narrowest point, the Pas de Calais. They'll use Maskilin's tactics to assemble a fake army in southeast England, across from Calais.
They built fake outbuildings, fake landing craft. They even had inflatable tanks. They got General Patton to come and pay several high-profile visits, just in the hope that German espionage would notice that, or indeed with all the fake equipment that a reconnaissance plane would see it and convince them that there was a build-up in that area when in fact it never actually existed.
The Germans fall for the Allies' trickery. In the months before D-Day, the Nazi command moves most of its feared tank divisions and much of the infantry 150 miles away from Normandy to the Pas de Calais. The Allies' deception is working perfectly. The Germans leave a part of one division to defend Omaha Beach. Franz Gockel is one of a small force of 600 men, but not for long. Enter Erwin Rommel, commander of all German defenses along the North French coast.
Rommel was a boogeyman for the Allies. He was a terrifyingly able tactician. He had an ability to get inside his opponent's mind. He was the devil as far as some were concerned.
The heart of Rommel's reputation is that he has fought in the desert with minimal resources and defeated the Allies time after time. Rommel isn't a typical soldier. He enjoys taking photographs. He loves animals, especially his pet dachshund, Ajax. He even plays the violin. Most important, he's a master strategist and skilled commander. Rommel's known for whipping his troops into shape and drawing the most from them. At Omaha, Rommel is instantly struck by déjà vu.
Rommel arrived at Omaha and had a kind of revelation. It reminded him of another beach he knew. It was Salerno.
Salerno is the beach the Allies successfully used to invade Italy in 1943. Thousands of troops landed there in an amphibious assault which overwhelmed the Germans. Like Salerno's beach, Omaha has the same gradual curve to the shoreline. And it also has a shallow gradient, both ideal for landing craft approaching the beach from the English Channel.
Rommel thought that these were exactly the same kind of features that the Allies might choose again when invading France.
Based on this, Rommel decides to heavily reinforce the beach. Over the next few months, Omaha Beach undergoes a transformation. The bunkers are upgraded into fortifications. In just 6 months, Rommel increases the number of defensive obstacles on the beach to 3,700, one for every 2 yards. And then he sends more troops to Omaha, many experienced, war-tested veterans, doubling the number of defenders on hand to 1,200. Rommel builds up a quiet coastal post into a formidable stronghold with fighting positions that overlook large sections of open beach. On June 6, 1944, Rommel's suspicions are confirmed.
The men looking out from their pillboxes this morning must have been filled with a mixture of fear and excitement. Emerging over the horizon, the vast fleet was approaching.
7:05 a.m., more than half an hour after the start of the largest amphibious invasion in history. From the newly reinforced fortification, Franz Gockel's firing as fast as his weapon allows. He won't know how many men he's killed until the corpses start washing up on the beach. Here on D-Day, life and death is being decided by a battle of wits. Initially, the Allies succeeded in concealing the invasion's landing point from the Germans. But Rommel's tactical genius wipes out any advantage they gain from this deception, with devastating consequences. Now, Hal Baumgarten is at the start of the Omaha Beach killing zone. In the chaos, Hal spots Robert Garbutt, his best friend in the Army.
I looked down, and there was Robert Garbutt. And that really got to me because I had tears coming down. And the tears were bloody from my face.
For the American soldiers, the early hours of the invasion of Omaha Beach is pure hell. But it wasn't supposed to be this way. In fact, the Allies had a plan to wipe out all the German defensive forces. But one thing stopped them. Hal Baumgarten is a 19-year-old GI from the Bronx. He began D-Day thinking he might die. Now, 30 minutes after the invasion starts, he's sure he will. It's 7:10 a.m. Hal's at the start of a 1,000-foot-long killing zone on Omaha Beach. Between him and his objective, the dunes at the back of the beach, are 3,700 defensive obstacles, thickets of barbed wire, and 17,000 landmines. To survive, he must evade them all, while under a constant barrage of machine gun fire from the cliffs.
What is interesting in standing on the beach here at Omaha is there is absolutely no cover at all. There might have been a few obstacles on the beach, or being able to shelter behind your dead comrades, but meanwhile the German gunners from the cliffs up there would be firing at you. It must have been horrendous.
Hal must run the deadly gauntlet without any covering fire. Around him is not only violence and carnage, but madness. He sees a soldier he recognizes.
And he was without his helmet. He had a gaping hole in the left side of his forehead. His hair was streaked with blood. Knelt down, started praying with his rosary beads, and the machine gun up on the right cut him in half. Horror, horror to see the body parts of people that we all knew. You could smell the burning flesh. There were men yelling for their mothers. It was a horrible scene.
A horrible scene that's about to get worse. Among the others witnessing the chaos is a young medic, Virgil Mounts. While not yet 20, like some other soldiers at Omaha Beach, Virgil has a secret. He's underage.
Virgil Mounts was only 15 years old. He lied to get in, took his brother's license. He never should have been here.
When he should have been back home in school, the 15-year-old Virgil is responsible for saving lives on a battlefield.
The shells started coming in.
Under heavy artillery fire, Virgil's job is to patch up injured men so they can keep fighting.
Called for medics to help him, and Virgil Mounts went over. That's a rough one to talk about. Went over trying to treat this wounded man. The shells were still coming in.
The Germans are firing scores of shells every minute at the soldiers on the beach. When an artillery shell bursts, it breaks into thousands of fragments, some small, some large. These travel outwards at over 3,000 yards per second, devastating for nearby soldiers. The fragments can even pass through one body into another.
And the shell that landed blew fragmentation through the body of Virgil Mounts. But Mounts was dead immediately. That's something I can never get it out of my mind, and it's as vivid as a photo of it right here in front of me, because you never forget that kind of thing.
As tragic as Virgil Mounts' death is, the real tragedy is it might have been prevented. That's because the Allies knew the kind of heavy artillery the Germans had to defend Omaha Beach, and had planned to take it out earlier that morning. At the back of the cliffs, the Germans assembled a vast arsenal of weapons. There are 30 anti-tank guns, 17 heavy mortars, and more than 20 field guns.
These are the kind of fortifications the Germans used to house their weapons. The Allied planners knew the type of weapons that were in here and the power of them, and they had to come up with a plan in order to neutralize them.
Early on the morning of D-Day, Allied planes depart to bomb the German defenses at Omaha Beach. 446 planes, armed with 13,000 bombs, equal to 1,000 tons of explosives. It promises to be the greatest example of precision bombing in history. The Air Force boasted they were so accurate, they could hit a pickle barrel from 10,000 feet. And this was a chance to prove it. But with low, thick clouds, the bombers have to rely on radar, a relatively recent invention, to hit the coast. The Navy doesn't trust it and is worried about the bombs hitting the Allies' own ships waiting in the ocean.
When the Allied heavy bombers approached the beach, the cloud cover kept them from seeing their actual target. Because of the threat of them actually dropping short and hitting the fleet offshore, they'd been told to delay. Wait until you're certain you're over the beach. Wait for 5, wait for 30 seconds, then drop.
A delay of a few seconds can change everything. For a bomber at 10,000 feet and traveling 150 miles per hour, a 5-second delay means its bombs will miss their target by a quarter of a mile. A 30-second delay, and it misses by 1.5 miles. 13,000 bombs were dropped that day, but incredibly, not a single one hits Omaha Beach or the guns overlooking it. It's the single biggest failure of the Allied plans for D-Day.
Oh my God, nothing is working.
It was going to be one of the worst days.
Hal Baumgarten is at the start of the flat, exposed beach.
And I said to myself, I got to get off this beach.
Hal sets off on a treacherous race across the sand.
I was thinking to myself, how is it going to feel when a bullet goes through me? How does it feel to get shot? And I heard a loud thud on my right front. So I hit the sand behind the hedgehog. I hope it's like my arm or my leg, not in my body. I turned my rifle over. There was a clean hole through it, the magazine section, and it had 7 bullets in it. So my bullets had saved my life.
Saved by a magazine of bullets. A remarkable stroke of luck. By 7:30 a.m., the end of the invasion's first hour, the battle for Omaha Beach is an all-out disaster for the Allies. But as bad as it is on the beach, 4 miles up the coast, other American soldiers, elite forces, have embarked on a suicide mission, the most dangerous of D-Day. 1 hour after landing as part of the largest amphibious invasion in history, American soldiers find themselves at death's doorstep. On blood-soaked, corpse-strewn Omaha Beach, the Germans are proving a far tougher enemy than expected. Along the coast are a number of large weapons hidden high on a rocky outcrop. Among them, 5 huge 155mm German artillery guns, which can obliterate anything within 15 miles. They can pummel Omaha and nearby Utah Beach, as well as demolish Allied ships arriving to support the invasion.
Those guns could have taken out the transports as they approached the coast.
Each transport is packed with thousands of troops, and within that 15-mile radius, they are all vulnerable. The artillery guns must be destroyed, but they're perched on top of 150-foot-high cliffs. The job of taking out the guns calls for a special breed of men. Men trained for high-risk suicide missions.
We knew it was going to be dangerous. We believed that we were able to do the job. This is part of commando training. You can do anything, we were told.
George Kirchner is a young lieutenant in the U.S. Army's elite Rangers. Before the war, George was a high school dropout, working in an ice cream shop. When war came, he enlisted in the Army, and his life changed. He proved himself an exceptional officer candidate and was accepted into the Rangers for special operation missions. During his 6 months training, George kept a secret from his pals, fearing it would cost him his place in the elite unit. But now, just moments before landing at Omaha Beach, he discovers he's not the only one.
It became more important to see the enemy and shoot them when they're shooting at you.
The Rangers must scale 150-foot cliffs under constant gunfire. Given the odds, they know many won't return from the mission.
Any cliff assault is challenging, if not probably one of the most difficult objectives to take.
You have to climb 150 feet to the top of the cliffs whilst being shot at. And then once you're at the top, you have to fight your way to the guns themselves.
I'd say in a complexity of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, it would be at number 10.
To help the men in this impossible task, the Rangers have special equipment.
While they were training back in England, they were building rocket-powered grapnel hooks fired from mortar tubes. For months, they'd been practicing firing these up cliffs and then climbing up the ropes.
But their practice never involved them being the targets of machine gunners and snipers, firing constantly at them. The Rangers' first job will be to cross the beach to the cliffs.
The machine gun on our left, up on top of the cliff, opened fire on us as we got out of the landing craft. And two of my men right next to me were wounded badly.
I got shot through the side. The medic looked at it and said, I'll patch it up, it'll be all right. You didn't hit anything important.
We're never going to do this thing. I turned and I said, this is a big mistake. We're never going to get up those cliffs.
With bullets showering them from above, the Rangers returned fire and set up their secret weapon, a rocket-powered grappling hook. But at the crucial moment, the launch fails. This is an experiment to explain what happened, using an exact replica of the grapnel firing mortar.
What we're going to do is we're going to insert the grapnel into the mortar, and we're going to launch this up this cliff face, which is very similar to the cliff face at Pont de Hoc, and we'll see what happens.
3, 2, 1.
Like the mortars in the Rangers' training, this one fires the grapnel and rope over 150 feet up the cliffs. But on D-Day at Pointe du Hoc, there was a crucial difference. That morning, the Rangers wait over 3 hours in the landing craft before going ashore. During that time, the ropes are sprayed with seawater.
What we're going to do here now is we're going to soak this rope down with water so that we can reproduce the actual conditions that happened on that day. Hasn't gone very far at all, obviously explained by the fact that the rope is soaking wet, and it's slowed the grapnel down as it flows through the air.
Just a few hundred fluid ounces of water is enough to prevent the grapnel from reaching the top. At Pointe du Hoc, it's the difference between success and failure.
So yes, it's to me that's what happened on that day. That was one of the problems that they had.
But of the 60 ropes the Rangers have, 19 are dry enough, and a handful of grapnels make it to the top of the cliffs. Kirchner is up one of the ropes immediately.
I just went. Even though the rope was wet, it didn't bother me. I probably went up in 15, 20 seconds.
Top of the cliff, the battle continues. Breaking through, the surviving Rangers fight their way to the guns. Finally, they find them. But Kirchner and his comrades are in for a shock. The Rangers have fought through heavy gunfire and taken 20 casualties getting there, only to find the Germans have tricked them. There are no artillery guns, just a pile of telegraph poles.
Got a gun! Here were crack troops who'd been preparing for this for months. They were determined to succeed. They were pumped up with adrenaline. And finally they reached their objective to find it was all in vain. They must have been gutted.
The demoralized Rangers now realize they face an enemy with fearsome firepower, while also skilled in deception. It's an enemy that's about to unleash its full arsenal on Omaha Beach. 8 a.m., D-Day, Omaha Beach. Thousands of American soldiers are pinned down by intense enemy fire. One of them is Hal Baumgartner. Over the last 90 minutes, he's zigzagged 700 feet across a 1,000-foot wide exposed beach. Along the way, he's seen men cut down by machine guns, nearly drowned, while he's escaped death by inches. Now comes bombardment by artillery.
It was very, very frightening. Shells are more frightening than if you're shot at with a machine gun, because it's coming from the unknown. You know, you don't know where it's going to land, whether your number is on that shell, so it's frightening. But I looked up and I cursed him. And just when I did that, an 88 millimeter shell went off in front of me.
Hal is hit by the round. Artillery fire kills and injures in two different ways. One by shrapnel, hot metal debris flying at 7,000 miles an hour.
An artillery shell, when it impacts, it's just going to throw hot shrapnel everywhere. It's like 1,000 different bullets going all over the place at one time, and it'll cut through humans like a hot knife going through butter.
Shrapnel is the clearest danger posed by artillery. In fact, my own father, Eric Ashcroft, was injured by shrapnel when he was landing on Sword Beach, another D-Day beach, that same morning.
Another way artillery kills is acoustically, the release of a concussion wave.
This is nothing more than the supercompressed air being pushed outward at thousands of feet per second. But if you're a soldier on the beach, it's devastating.
I used to be a catcher. Once in a while, somebody would hit me with a baseball bat. That's what it felt like.
It does not even have to hit you. Just the initial wave of that blast could literally start knocking your insides all around to the point where you could die and not even knowing that you're dying. Nobody would even be able to tell that you were hit.
While he survived, the shrapnel and concussion wave have nearly ripped Hal's cheek off. At 8:30 a.m., just 2 hours after the start of D-Day, the American attack on Omaha Beach is in disarray. Defeat seems certain. But behind the German lines, a group of brave civilians are waging a clandestine fight. The French resistance.
In the months before D-Day, the French resistance start to increase their intelligence gathering operation about German troop movements in order to feed it to the Allies.
Resistance spies focus particularly on the new defenses the Germans build along the D-Day beaches. But it's risky business.
There are almost 200,000 Nazi troops looking for any hint of spying. So the French resistance have to start to be creative in the way they go about the intelligence gathering operation.
Artist Robert Duan helps by painting landscapes, placing hidden meaning in his images. He's secretly mapping the German coastal fortifications. Resistance agent Jean Marion sends messages to the Allies via homing pigeon. France to London in just 4 hours. As D-Day approaches, the resistance members step up their action. sabotaging German communications. They destroy telegraph lines and blow up trains. But as the resistance becomes bolder, the Germans become more vigilant. In the weeks prior to D-Day, the Germans strike back with a vengeance. They shoot the spy pigeons. Then they round up the members of the resistance and shoot them too. By then, the resistance has done its damage. On the beach, without communications, the Germans find it harder to bring in reinforcements. If only the Allied forces can break through at Omaha. But for Hal Baumgarten, the battle there is going from bad to worse. Severely injured by artillery fire, his only refuge is the seawall ahead of him. Some 800 feet along the 1,000-foot wide beach. Here, the survivors gather, their hopes fading.
You know, we were a proud outfit. Well-trained, well-disciplined. We thought nobody could defeat us. There were these guys stacked up, dead. And of course the blood was all over the place. And the body parts, it was horrible. I said, why not me? When am I gonna get a bullet in me?
.30 a.m., Omaha Beach. 3 hours into the D-Day invasion. The American assault is disintegrating under the rain of German bullets and bombs. Among those struggling to survive, 19-year-old Sergeant Bob Slaughter.
I was a student, and I hadn't finished high school. We decided that we would like to have an adventure, I guess. We got more than we had bargained for, I can tell you.
Bob and his buddies are pinned down at the seawall, and confusion reigns.
We lost all of our officers. We lost all of our non-coms. We didn't have any leadership. Just a bunch of guys like me, do the best you can.
The men are hemmed in from two directions. Ahead of them, relentless German fire. Behind them, the fast-approaching tide. By 9:30, the sea covers most of the beach, squeezing thousands of desperate men onto a narrow strip of land barely 10 yards wide. Hemmed in, under fire, the men are easy targets for the German gunners. But there is help from other Allied soldiers inland. The night before D-Day, more than 1,200 planes lift off for Normandy. The Allies want to protect the infantrymen on the beaches from a German counterattack. So they launch a major preemptive airborne assault. This is the first wave of paratroopers. But these are no ordinary soldiers. 3 feet tall, made of rubber, with bombs attached. The Allies drop mannequin parachutists designed to fool the Germans. They burst into flames on landing, while Special Forces men play the sound of gunfire through loudspeakers to simulate a major attack. The Germans fall for the ploy.
So German reserves are sent out to intercept these exploding dummies. Hundreds of men are sent out in one direction when they should have been heading in completely the opposite one.
Now it's the turn of 13,000 real paratroopers. This is the 101st Airborne. Pat Macri is a 20-year-old paratrooper. By the time he returns to England, 1 in 5 of his comrades will have been killed or wounded. Pat's plane nears the drop zone.
The mood changed completely. Also, the ride changed. It became bumpy, erratic, veering to the left, veering to the right, and then tracers, and then ack-ack.
Stand up! Hook up! Stand up! Hook up! Stand up!
Crossing themselves, saying prayers, realizing that this is it. Check the man on the front of you and you hit him on the back.
6 okay! 5 okay! 4 okay!
Is everyone okay? Hell yes. Stand at the door. And there's hardly any pause.
Go!
Almost as one, like a liquid poured out of the plane. All of a sudden, the static line grabs and it whips you, it pulls you back, and there's a tremendous jerk. And then I had a sense of quietness and peace.
What Pat doesn't know is that the greatest danger the paratroopers face is from something they're wearing. And a scheme conjured up by German commander Erwin Rommel.
To make it harder for the airborne division of an invasion force, Rommel orders the Germans to flood hundreds of square miles of fields by damming 2 major Normandy rivers.
Hundreds of paratroopers now land in water, dangerous enough on a normal parachute jump. But these soldiers are each carrying over 100 pounds of equipment. Each one's survival depends on escaping his harness.
On D-Day, Allied paratroopers landed on either side of the beachhead. Americans on one side, British on the other. The American equipment was released with 3 buckles and a strap. The British had a single quick-release mechanism that enabled them to get out of their harness. The British paratrooper got out of his harness in just over 5 seconds, while the American paratrooper is still fighting to get out of his.
The parachute entangles the men. The harness is now a death trap.
You had to clear yourself of the chute, because the chute could collapse over you. If you did nothing in a few seconds, that would be the end of your life. There was no quick release. You had to reach down and release this leg and that leg. It was a tremendous hazard.
Of the 13,000 paratroopers who jump, hundreds drown.
We lost a lot of soldiers, good people.
For many soldiers, the design of their buckle is the difference between life and death. As in any battle, some small twists of fate have the greatest of consequences. But back on Omaha Beach, one quality found on the field of battle is about to change history: sheer bravery. 10:30 a.m., D-Day. The invasion of Normandy at Omaha Beach is collapsing. Thousands of American soldiers are dead or wounded from German bombs and bullets, as well as from seasickness that weakens them before battle. Drowning caused by the weight of their equipment. Amphibious tanks that sink in rough seas. And parachute harnesses that don't release underwater. The soldiers fighting back face incredible odds. On the beach, injured Private Hal Baumgarten sizes up the situation.
I thought we were losing. It was just a matter of time.
And it began to cross my mind, maybe this day just failed.
But one man has been watching from offshore. He sees that without leadership and belief, the mission at Omaha Beach will fail. At 51, he's the oldest soldier there. General Norman Dutch Cota. He's from a humble background. In the Army, accepted to West Point, he excelled. Later, he married Eleanor Roosevelt's cousin. Now, a few hundred yards off Omaha Beach, Cota realizes this is the defining moment of his career, and he acts.
Cota knows he has three priorities. One is to inject some leadership, two is to get his men off the beach, and three is then to take the attack to the Germans.
Once ashore, Cota takes control.
Suddenly, some of my men, they said, "Hey, Captain, look at that guy down there." And I looked down the beach about 100 to 150 yards, and here was a man waving a cigar, and he was yelling at people on the beach.
It was hard to believe that somebody was running across that beach, because the beach was still active with firing.
Even at that range, he looked a little rotund compared to most of us, and we said, "Wonder what he is."
The man was fearless.
What he decided at that point was, okay, what I need to do is to take charge of this situation, because I see death and destruction and chaos, and I need to take charge here because no one is.
We're gonna get to that headland and we're gonna break out of this deep.
Cota was up, he was talking, he was encouraging the people, imparting some of his bravery into them.
He said, "We can't stay here. We got to go inland."
As he was leaving me, he turned and said, "I know you won't let me down."
But leadership also requires strategy.
Just beyond the seawall, there were two lines of barbed wire. Cota needed to get his men through them and across the open ground beyond before they could start to attack the Germans in their gun positions.
Getting through the first line of barbed wire is relatively simple. The challenge is to cut through the second line, 10 yards up the hill. For that, Cota has an answer.
Right, what we've got here is a Bangalore torpedo. This is just like the ones the Rangers used on the beach in 1944. And as you can see, it comes in two parts. The first part is a steel tube like this, and it's filled with around about 75 pounds of TNT. You can see that it's got like a bullet-headed end to help it get through barbed wire entanglements and what have you. This is the second bit, and as you can see, this part will slot into the end of this one and join it together to help it push through the defences you're going to blow.
For soldiers under fire, the key is speed. The Bangalore torpedo must blast through the wire quickly. Time to test the weapon.
Well, the Bangalore torpedo has blown a channel right through our barbed wire entanglement, actually blasting both sides of the barbed wire, either side of the channel. You can actually smell the explosives on it. You can see the discoloration, and it's just cut it. It's gone.
The Bangalore torpedo can do the job for Kota and the men, but it must be put into place. And the first men to try to do it have just been killed. When General Dutch Kota arrived on Omaha Beach, he faced an almost impossible task. American soldiers are pinned down on a narrow strip of sand, trapped by Germans on one side, the sea on the other. Weary and wounded, they're close to giving up. Now Kota must inspire them to believe they can win the battle. To get off the beach, they must climb a hill and cut through barbed wire, a job that's already cost him lives. Help seems just offshore. 12 warships able to fire on the German bunkers in support of the men on Omaha Beach. The captain of one ship, James Sims of the USS Frankfurt, wants to help, but can't. He's under orders to hold off. His job is not to save soldiers on the beach, but to protect the vulnerable fleet of troop ships stationed offshore. For the moment, that leaves General Kota and his men on their own. The first part of Kota's plan to get off the beach works. They blow a hole in the barbed wire barrier. But waiting near the top of the hill for them is an MG-42 machine gun, firing 25 bullets a second. One of Kota's men volunteers to charge the fastest machine gun in the world.
Imagine you're Kota. For the second time, you found yourself in a moment of crisis. One man is shot, screaming in agony. Your other soldiers watching on, their resolve wavering. What do you do?
That general knew that he was in command at that time and that he needed to make something happen or they were all gonna die.
Kota shows his resolve with a now famous remark. Gentlemen, we are being killed on the beaches. Let us go inland and be killed. He then deploys the best weapon at his disposal, leadership, and is the first to run up the hill. One commander's decision leads to action that inspires his men. It will prove a major turning point in the battle for Omaha Beach. Kota leads the charge. Meanwhile, 10 miles offshore, another critical decision is being made.
Out on the ships of the D-Day fleet, some of the senior officers are trying to follow the battle.
As this actual footage of the beach shows, hundreds of men are dead or injured on the sand and in the surf. The senior officers are on the verge of giving up.
By mid-morning, they're considering whether to move some of the troops they have left onto another beach.
The senior officers face a strategic dilemma. Use the destroyers to protect the troop ships, or use them to attack the Germans on the beach.
Then news starts to come through that some of the troops are starting to break through the German lines.
After hours of holding back, the Navy commanders finally give the order to engage. Commander James Semmes of the USS Frankfurt is allowed to head full speed to shore.
Full steam ahead.
Semmes takes the Frankfurt so close to the beach, he risks scraping its hull on the seabed. Just 800 yards offshore, the Frankfurt turns broadside and fires. The attack begins.
The shell came over me. You heard whoosh, a whishing sound, and then boom.
You could hear the destroyer boom, 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 boom.
What you want to do is shake hands with the skipper of that ship.
For the men, it's a moment of relief. 11 other warships join in the attack. After hours facing imminent defeat, the battle at Omaha Beach is finally turning for the Americans. D-Day, Omaha Beach. A time and a place where the smallest decision could make the difference between life and death. In the boats offshore, do you eat a full breakfast? If you do, it could mean crippling seasickness and drowning before you even get to the beach.
There's an awful irony. You've come all the way to Omaha Beach to come and fight for your country. But yet as you come off that landing craft, you don't make it this far. You're fighting for your life in the surf.
And once in the water, the difference between a bullet killing you or missing you is just inches.
What seems so extraordinary is that if a bullet hits the water within a foot of you, you're dead. But if it hits the water within a yard of you, you're safe.
But D-Day almost never happened. For days, violent storms make the seas too rough for an amphibious landing. Weather forecasters are desperate for a break. Then comes a new piece of secret information from out in the Atlantic.
The reading suggests there may be a short gap, a single day, when the weather improves slightly. So the lives of thousands of American soldiers is wagered on a single weather report.
Then there's the beach, a mere 1,000 feet wide, short enough to cross in less than a minute if it wasn't for this, the MG-42, and its speed comes from a tiny but revolutionary innovation.
In any gun, bullets are locked in place by a bolt, but the Germans discovered if the bolt runs on tiny rollers, it massively increases the speed at which bullets can be loaded. It means the gun can fire at 1,500 bullets per minute.
The MG-42 has turned Omaha Beach into a 1,000-foot stretch of carnage. Some never make it across. For others, it takes hours. The difference between life and death can be as slim as the butt of your gun.
I turned my rifle over. There was a clean hole through its magazine section, and it had 7 bullets in it. So my bullets had saved my life.
Further inland, once again, small things often have the greatest impact. A poorly designed parachute harness means many U.S. paratroopers drown in flooded fields.
Imagine what it's like. You're wearing a harness that even if you're on dry land would be difficult to get out of. Terrifying.
But in battle, bravery can still overcome twists of fate. General Cota and his men have broken through.
The man was fearless.
Supported by naval fire, they cut a route inland. An army of men can now pour into France. And the liberation of Western Europe begins.
What's so astonishing is that in the days after D-Day, 200,000 more men were landed, bringing in 3 million tons of supplies. A logistical exercise that the world had not seen before and has not seen since.
This is an aerial photograph of Omaha Beach taken at noon on D-Day. It's high tide. You can see the waves lapping against the seawall, the landing craft, abandoned tanks and vehicles in the surf. But between them, you can also see hundreds of dots. Each one is a body, a dead American soldier washed up onto the beach. During the next 24 hours, Rifleman Hal Baumgarten is wounded on another 4 occasions, 5 times in all. He would recover from his injuries, but one wound lingered.
I had severe guilt for surviving because I kept saying, why me? A lot of people, when they pray to God, they say, why me? Why have I got this disease? Why isn't God helping me? But in my case, it was reverse. I said, why me? Why did they die and I survived?
No one knows exactly how many American soldiers died at Omaha Beach. Historians estimate over 2,000, with at least that many wounded. And Omaha was just one of 5 beaches where the Allies landed that day. In all, some 10,000 Allied soldiers were casualties. 4,000 Germans also died, as did 3,000 French civilians. D-Day was a great cause, perhaps the greatest. But for the countries involved, it also had a great cost in lives cut too short and futures ended too soon.
Those men will always be young, in my opinion. See, they're not old like I am. They will remain young. Just boys running after girls and drinking beer and having a good time.